Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. I hope you've been enjoying the content over the last couple of days. As just been said, this afternoon, myself and Pauline are going to talk you through some of the practicalities around bringing sustainability into an agency business, focusing on how we've done that at MediaCom across our operations, our output and strategy over the last 5 years or so. And we're also going to talk you through what we've learned along the way. But first, we thought we'd do some proper introductions. I'm Helen Brain. I'm a strategy director at MediaCom, and I also jointly lead our social change hub. The social change hub at MediaCom works with our clients to drive social impact in areas including sustainability, obviously, inclusivity, and also behaviour change. I am extremely passionate about the role our industry has to play in creating a better future and tackling climate change. And that my passion began or started to grow a few years ago when I was having an existential crisis. And I think if you've been in the industry for a while, you probably recognise the kind of 10 to 15 year existential crisis of what am I doing? Should I stay in this industry? Should I do something else? The news was terrifying. And luckily, round about that time, I was taking part in a 6-month purpose-led leadership course with Purpose Disruptors called Reclaiming Agency. And that course really opened my eyes to the contribution that our industry was making to the climate crisis, but it also really opened my eyes to the power and responsibility our industry has to do something about that crisis. And I found that really exciting and really motivating. The idea that in amongst all of that fear and terror of what was going on in the world, we actually have a sense of agency, and there is very much something we can be doing about it in our day-to-day work. And so that is where I've tried to focus my time over the last few years. It's been looking at how do I create positive change through the work that I do day in, day out as part of the advertising industry. I'm joined today by Pauline Robson, who heads up our consultancy unit at MediaCom, and she's going to tell you a little bit about how she got into this field.
Thanks, Helen. I'm Pauline Robson, and as Helen said, I lead MediaCom's consultancy, Blink, which is our marketing transformation consultancy. And I've been engaged in sustainability in the industry for probably about 5 years or so, when I first set up MediaCom's Green Team back in, I guess, towards the end of 2016, early 2017. I've always sort of seen myself as being quite eco-conscious, I guess, ever since I first learnt about climate change and the greenhouse effect when I was back at school, which was a very long time ago. But that eco-consciousness really for me meant that for many years I was conscientiously doing my recycling whilst I was simultaneously racking up hundreds of thousands of air miles for both business and pleasure. And, I felt a little bit conflicted about this. And in all honesty, I often felt a bit conflicted about the work that I was doing in the advertising industry. But I sort of thought that somebody else was taking care of climate change. I was thinking, surely it can't be that much of an emergency if I'm still able to carry on doing all of those things that we've heard are really bad for the environment. Surely they wouldn't let the climate emergency happen. And then in 2018, I also took part in the Reclaiming Agency programme that Helen's mentioned. In fact, I think I was the cohort after Helen's. And the timing of it was really significant because it was just after the IPCC had released their special report, which showed just how far off track we were to keeping within 1.5 degrees of warming. And that first morning of Reclaiming Agency of that programme was quite an eye-opener for me, actually. It made me realise just how serious the climate and biodiversity emergency is. It made me realise how our work is contributing to it, but also the absolutely key role that the advertising industry has to play in addressing it. And it also made me realise that there isn't that magical somebody else who's taking care of things to make sure that we avert climate catastrophe. It's really down to all of us. So since then, I've been working with some amazing people across MediaCom, across Group M and the wider industry to look at how we can create change. And Helen is one of those amazing people, and I'm going to hand back to her.
Thank you. So as Pauline says, our journey at MediaCom started probably late 2016, early 2017. And our approach to sustainability started off as quite organic and quite bottom up and really quite focused on the practical side of how do we do better within our operations. So we were looking at things like, do we have enough recycling bins? Does everybody know how to use them? And that took more work than you would imagine to make sure that everybody knows how to use recycling bins. We also looked at things like, can we change behaviour within the office? Can we get people to turn their monitors off every evening? Can we get people to print less often? And that approach has become much more holistic, much more structured, and much more focused, not just on reducing the negative impacts that we may cause through our work, but also on how we can create positive impacts through our work and through the work that we do with our clients and our partners every day. We now have very clear aims and objectives set and shared at WPP and Group M level, although we integrate those aims and objectives into each agency slightly differently, depending on the agency's vision and its culture and the products that it offers to our clients. So there are three key aims, which you may have seen in some of the news from WPP over the last few months. One of those is to make our own operations net zero by 2025. So that work primarily focuses on things like how we power our offices, our travel policies, and our waste reduction practices, for instance. Our second aim is that we will be giving all clients options for carbon neutral campaigns by 2025. So at the moment, we primarily do that through the carbon calculator, which some of you may have seen Pauline talking about over the last couple of days. But we also have a bigger target when it comes to output at WPP level, which is to have a fully net zero supply chain by 2030. And within MediaCom, within the media agency, that is focused primarily on how do we reduce emissions through the media that we place with our media partners and production partners. Our third aim is to bring sustainability into the work and the strategies that we create for our clients every day. And how do we do that over the next few years? So what you can see here, hopefully, is that our approach started from the inside and we worked our way out of the business. There's a couple of reasons for that. One is it's easiest to start from the inside because that's where the things are that you can control. The second is that you don't always know what you don't know. So when we first began this journey, we didn't know what level of our emissions were actually associated with our output. That's only become really clear over the last year or so. And so it's only as we've become clearer on our emissions and where they lie that we're able to take actions to deal with those. And Pauline's going to talk to you a little bit more about those now and go into some of the detail around the work that we've done within our operations and our output to reduce emissions.
So yes, I'm going to start with operations. As Helen said, we really started here at MediaCom. And I mean, that's probably usually the starting point for most organisations, actually. It's the most immediate place to start. It's the most visible place. And it's where organisations usually have the most control. The challenge here is that for the vast majority of organisations, particularly for agencies, the emissions from your operations is really going to be only a tiny proportion of your overall emissions. The vast majority will sit within your upstream and downstream supply chain. And as Helen said, we've only recently had visibility of what that looks like for WPP, but within WPP, less than 2% of our emissions sits within our scopes 1 and 2. So that's not to say that you shouldn't start here. Every step towards reducing emissions counts. And starting close to home is actually a really great way to signal to your employees, to your partners, and to your clients that you're walking the talk. And it's a great way to start to engage your people in sustainability. At MediaCom, this all started really with the Green Team, which was formed around 5 years ago. And that was really done to bring together people who are passionate about sustainability across the business, to look at how we could encourage more sustainable behaviours in the building. And Helen's already sort of touched on some of this, but there's some really quick and easy wins here. Things like switching to renewable energy within the building, encouraging people to travel to meetings by public transport rather than by taxi, limiting flying, which actually recently has been made so much easier now that we're all doing meetings over Teams and Zoom, and that's become quite the norm in terms of how we run meetings. And looking at things like eliminating single-use plastics, encouraging more recycling, responsible waste disposal are all really key ways to help operations become more sustainable. Mediacom's Green Team has really been instrumental within the business in raising awareness and visibility of the topic internally and in helping people to live more sustainable lifestyles, both inside and outside of work. So an example is when the team supported the transition to a new recycling system a couple of years ago, a time that I lovingly refer to myself as Mediacom's unofficial head of bins. Spent a lot of time kind of working out the best way to launch that new recycling system and encourage behaviour change in the building. We increased recycling rates by over 40%. There's still more work to do there, but as we were kind of getting into really getting going with that campaign, we ended up going into lockdown. So more work to be done in the world of bins. But the team has been instrumental in that and has been really working hard as well to help the business phase out single-use plastics. And they've really played a key role in communications as well. So they've been organising regular events. They've been bringing in inspirational speakers and really kind of making stuff happen in the agency. One of my favourite events was part of one of our Green Weeks, which was a clothes swap that we ran in partnership with Elle magazine to encourage people to bring in unwanted clothes and swap them for new pre-loved items, which went really well. One of the challenges that the team's had to contend with recently, of course, is the shift in focus as we've moved to a world of remote working during COVID. So having spent a lot of their time working on behaviour change in the office, they've had to pivot comms and messaging towards helping people to live more sustainably at home during lockdown. And they've done that brilliantly, focusing on things like food waste, for example, to help people get the most out of their weekly shop. So that's a very quick overview of kind of what we've been doing in operations. There's some key learnings that I think it's useful to share here. So the first one really is by all means start here. It's a great place to start, but don't get stuck here. This isn't where your biggest environmental impact is. It's really important to get your house in order, but it's also really important to move beyond here and pretty quickly, because there are bigger emissions to deal with elsewhere. The second is really a theme that you'll hear throughout this talk, and I think it's probably been a theme actually throughout this conference, which is about the importance of community and collaboration. So there will be lots of people in your organisation who are really passionate about sustainability and who really want to make change happen. So find them and start taking action together. And the third one is really about getting senior level support for your initiatives. Having a senior leader on board as a sponsor can really help to make things happen. So on to output. And this is where we really are starting to sort of move beyond the impact of our operations to look at the wider impact of our work. And in the case of emissions, this is the emissions associated with the work that we do for our clients. So within WPP, around 55% of indirect emissions sits within media placement. So tackling this is absolutely crucial for achieving our net zero targets and also helping our clients to achieve theirs. So part of this is really about developing products that help us to understand the wider impact of our work. And one of the key tools here is the Media Carbon Calculator, which is really the starting point to helping us understand the emissions associated with a media plan. And if you tuned into my session earlier on this morning talking about the IPA Media Climate Charter, you'd have heard me talking about the carbon calculator there. A really important aspect here is about looking actually beyond MediaCom and joining the dots beyond our agency to share challenges and learnings and to accelerate actions. And one of the key ways we've been doing this is via the Group M Mission Zero Working Group, which is a cross-agency group that brings together people from all of the Group M opcos to work together on our response to the climate emergency. And I just want to give a shout out to all of the brilliant people who are involved in that group, because it's an amazing group to be part of, and I'm really proud to be involved in it. We came together as a group just over 2 years ago to explore an important question, which was, what does a media agency look like in a net zero future? And we've created a blueprint for what that change looks like across our organisations. And we're developing initiatives and products that will help us deliver that. As Helen said, this is obviously going to be implemented differently within each of the agencies, depending on the agency culture. But we all share the same targets and we all share the same initiatives and tools. a key element of the way that we work is that we do this really collaboratively. So we take collective action, we share thinking and learning as we go so that we don't end up reinventing the wheel several times over, and so that we can accelerate and scale our response. And there are a couple of things that have really helped to drive the work of the group on. So the first has been securing a Group M Exco sponsor. And the second has been to set ourselves targets and then share them with both the senior leadership team, but also with the wider organisation. There's something that's quite stealing about standing up and announcing targets and intentions in a Group M town hall to, around 3,000 UK colleagues. It really means that you've kind of made a commitment and now you've got to deliver on it. One of the things that's really notable is how willing agencies are to work together in this space. There's a real understanding of the urgency of the crisis that we're facing and the need for us to work together if we're going to be able to effect meaningful change at the speed and scale that's required. And those of you who saw the Change the Brief session earlier today would have heard Rob McFall speaking to the urgency of this brilliantly. And this is a way of working not just within Mission Zero, but also within the IPA Media Climate Action Group, which brings together 23 media agencies who've signed up to the IPA Media Climate Charter to work together on our industry response. And of course, this also means looking at how we work with our media partners. Our decarbonisation journey really is dependent on our media partners also reaching net zero, and we can't meet our ambitions unless they also decarbonise rapidly. So in terms of key learnings when it comes to output, so the first one is that collaboration is key. We can't fix this by working alone. So we need to join the dots within our own agencies, but also beyond. And that applies at every level. So within agencies, holding groups across the whole industry. There are some absolutely brilliant communities out there that you can get involved with. The second one is about progress over perfection. So we are very much learning as we go here. We're definitely not perfect, far from it. But we know that we can't wait for perfection before we get started or before we start to talk about this. We don't have time. And anyway, nobody is perfect in this space. The key thing really is to be honest about where we still have work to do and to start improving in this area. And this brings me to my final point. There is nothing quite like setting a target and then sharing it with everybody to focus the mind. So set yourself a goal and then tell people about it. And I'm going to hand back to Helen.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how we're starting to embed sustainability into our organisational strategy and into the strategic work we produce for our clients. Mediacom's organisational vision is to help our clients see the big picture, and there probably isn't anything that is bigger than the climate crisis. So it is imperative for us that we figure out what it means for our clients. And so what we've started to do is figure out how do we enable everybody to be able to talk knowledgeably about the climate crisis. You need everyone involved if you want to integrate sustainability into your work as an agency. But that's quite difficult. In fact, it's very difficult. Most people within our industry are very excited and motivated by the idea of creating positive change. But there is a bit of a barrier in terms of bringing that motivation into client work. And quite often that barrier is just about not having enough confidence to talk to clients about climate change. And that's not surprising if you consider the fact that climate change involves you having to know things from the fields of science and economics and psychology and politics. Like it's a lot for people to take on. So as part of Group M's Mission Zero working group, we have created a training programme for every single member of our staff that will give people the knowledge and the licence to talk about climate change, to understand the role of our industry in both contributing to it and helping tackle it, and then the ability to talk to our clients and really offer to help them and give them really good advice. We launched this training last month, and we purposefully started with the Exco within every agency within Group M. And our commitment is to train hundreds of our people by the end of next year in the basics of climate science, so that we are able to knowledgeably talk about what this crisis means for our industry and how we can best support our clients in tackling it. On top of that, we're also integrating sustainability into the very core of our business, so into our planning process. So we've gone through a process over the last few months of looking at where sustainability can influence different parts of the media plan. And sustainability can influence the shape of a media plan in quite a few different areas. So the shift to a sustainable future can create demand for new products and services. Legislation can drive demand for new products and services. The shift to a sustainable future is changing shopper motivations. It's adding extra things to people's tick list when they go looking for a new product or service. In pretty much every vertical, it's shifting competitor behaviour for the clients that we work for. So in almost every category, there are one or two brands who are really starting to change their communications approach based on their sustainability ambitions as a business, which is quite interesting for the brands who are playing catch up. It also changes the kinds of work we can produce. I think historically sustainability focused work has been quite informational and educational. And I think increasingly we'll see people realise that sustainability isn't a separate thing happening over here somewhere to the side of us. It's actually culturally relevant. And being culturally relevant is something that we are all supposed to be good at doing. And so therefore sustainability is an opportunity to build into our planning processes. And finally, sustainability is influencing how we view our measures of success. If we want to measure more than just profit, and we should be if we're talking about creating a better future, then we need measurement frameworks that allow us to measure things beyond profit. And I think that's something that we'll all need to be thinking about over the next year or so as we go forward. We are also part of the Change the Brief Alliance, and our relationship with the Alliance and everything we learn from the Alliance and from this Change the Brief Alliance community can be fed back into our planning processes to ensure that we're bringing best in market practice to our clients and to our teams when it comes to training them. So three things that have become very apparent as we've tried to bring sustainability into our client work are, one, creating a better future is everyone's job now. It's not a specialism. As an industry, we need to scale up our solutions and our approach to the climate crisis. And that means we all, regardless of function, need to figure out how to bring climate change and tackling climate change into our work on a day-to-day basis. The second thing is that if we want to create that better future, we need to make it as easy as possible to bring sustainability into our work. And for me, that kind of falls into three practical steps you can take. So one is to take any piece of work and break it into small steps so that it's very simple for people to do. The second thing is to make sure that every step has an owner against it, so the work doesn't fall down a crack somewhere. And the third thing to do, and the thing that I personally have probably struggled with quite a lot, is to make sure that you're always bringing everybody else in your organisation along with you. I get really excited about doing work in this area and I run ahead and I'm like, I've got this great idea, but we can give this work to our clients. And then I look around and kind of go, oh, crap, I forgot to bring everybody else along with me. If we're going to scale our response to the crisis, we have to bring everybody along with us. That's really, really important. Finally, we need to bring climate change into our everyday conversations in our industry. So if you're in an organisation and you have an idea about how you might go about tackling climate change through your work, talk to your peers about it, ask people for feedback, create a community of curious and passionate colleagues and discuss what climate change, what this looks like for your business. But the important thing is to just start talking about it. If you or your organisation is at the beginning of your journey of embedding sustainability, it can feel quite scary because it can feel like you're one of the only people bringing it into conversation sometimes. And what I'd say we've probably learned over the last few years is that you're not alone. You're never alone. If you bring it into the conversation, chances are other people in the room will also then get involved in the conversation. You just need somebody to begin it. And so there is... it's a real cliche, but you kind of need to be the change you want to see in your world. If you want everyone to talk about climate change in your business, then you need to start talking about it as a first step. But we're obviously not finished. We will never be finished. Tackling the climate crisis is unlikely to be a brief that we crack in our lifetimes. So there's always new things for us to get excited about and new ideas and projects for us to be working on. And two things I'm really excited about at the moment are how do we use our skills to shift consumption models? So how do we work with our clients to help them shift what people buy? So going from meat to plant-based foods, for instance, how do we help them shift how people buy? So persuading people to buy refillable bottles of shampoo rather than single-use plastic bottles of shampoo. And how do we help brands shape what people do after they've bought a product? So do they resell? Do they upsell? Do they recycle? What do people do afterwards? That's something we've probably not thought about enough as an industry. But this idea of innovating consumption models, I think, is probably key to society hitting our net zero goals, and is therefore a really key challenge for our industry. The second thing that I think is really exciting for us and really challenging as well is how do we create better measurement frameworks that allow us to see the bigger picture within our industry. As I said earlier, we tend to focus just on profit and revenue when we're looking at the effectiveness of our campaigns. We have to go beyond that and look at the impact on people and planet as well, if we want to help our clients hit not just their business growth targets, but also their sustainability targets. And so some of you may have seen Ben Essen and Caroline Davison talking about eco-effectiveness over the last couple of days. That's one route to building out our measurement frameworks. The Purpose Disruptors have some work that they're presenting on Tuesday next week, which I think is going to dig a bit further into that area as well. So that might be worth looking at. But expanding our definition of success is going to be key, again, to making sure that we do work that is successful across all three metrics: people, planet, and profit. So that brings us to the end of our talk. We hope you found it interesting, and more importantly, we really hope you found it useful and that there have been some learnings you can take out and apply to your own business. We wanted to give just a couple of really, really simple things for people to take away if you are at the beginning of this journey. So one of those would be to tomorrow find somebody else in your organisation who is passionate about climate change and the role of our industry in tackling it. Make them your friend. It is much easier, more productive, and more fun, frankly, to do this work as part of a team. The second thing we'd recommend is go to the Ad Net Zero website and start looking at the steps that are outlined there. They are really clear and really thorough, and a fantastic starting place for anybody who has not got really stuck into the journey yet. So thank you again for your time. We've really enjoyed talking to you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon.